Coming up on today's show, I have my friend and the funniest missionary I know, Michael Reeves. You don't want to miss today's show. Hello, darling, and welcome to today's show. You are listening to Wake Up and Show Up Live. I am your host, Portia Scott, and this is a daily show giving you a daily dose of inspiration and empowerment. I am excited to be here today because you guys know we didn't have a show yesterday. What is that? I missed each and every one of you. So thank you so much for joining, darlings. Thank you. You guys know how we do in the comments. If anyone in our community, or if I say anything that says something to you, I want you to say, hello, darling. So we know you're there. So we're super excited about today's episode because I have a very, very special guest. But before I bring our guest on, I want to always say that the way that you can contact us, keep in touch with us, is to text the phrase wake up to 31996. That's wake up to 31996. So you will be in the know whenever we go live with Wake Up and Show Up Live, our daily show, or when a podcast episode has been released. We also try to send you some inspiration and encouragement. And encouragement are the tools, the inspiration to do. So we like to send those out as well. Also, one of the things that you guys can do is that if you have an answer and you're part of our Wake Up and Show Up community and you get a text, you can always text us back. So Deja, Rosetta, Paula, thank you guys so much for joining, darlings. Thank you. You guys know how we do it. I always say that we may not be able to feed the 5,000, but we can feed one. What does that mean? That we can impact the community. We can impact the world with one act of kindness. This week, we are looking at Family Promise. They are headquartered here in Savannah, Georgia, and they provide homes to homeless, mostly women and children. And so during COVID-19, they are doing that work. So look them up. It's Family Promise. We want to make sure that we have our acts of kindness and that we're doing it for organizations that are helping the community. I see some people on. Hello, darling. Hello, mommy. Thank you so much for joining. Paula's in, Deja is in, Ty's in, Jasmine is in, Kay, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say the last name. Forgive me, but you are in, and we love to have you. So listen, we are going to get into the show because it's going to be good. I want to make sure we have time to really talk to our guests. So our guest, we met in the military, and we were deployed in Iraq together. We spent 12 months together trying to survive and serving our country. And he and I became really, really close friends. We would go to church together. We would go to eat together. We had many conversations together about just trying to keep it together. And so when I met John Henry, we have this thing, we laugh all the time because he had found out about him. I'm sure I told him. And he would always, one time I was walking with John and he says, Portia, is that your man? And so that's like our joke. But he has come, him and his family have come to the church before, because when Michael got out of the military, and he has a very distinguished career, he's been deployed multiple times and just done some incredible things. And him and his family, a family of 6, they felt called to the mission field. And so they set out on this journey to Ecuador to serve the people of Ecuador. And if there's anything else that I could say about him and his family, is that they are just the kindest people you will ever meet. So I know him personally. I know his family personally, but I think it's important that I want you guys to know him just a little bit more before I bring him out. And so he is married to his best friend, Kelly, and they've been married for 21 years. Can you believe it? 21 years. They have 4 children: Eric, who is 19, Michaela, who is 18, Xander is 13, and Gabe is 11. And so could you imagine, like 5 years ago, these kids were like even younger. So you have to imagine the just the amount of impact that they wanted to make, that they would take these children along, because I cannot say that I would have followed that. I would have been like, my kids, no. But we're so grateful for them. He served in the military for over 10 years, and on his last deployment as an Army engineer captain in 2011, God told him that it was time to get out and serve in full-time ministry as missionaries. He got out, finished seminary, and came on with SIM. And we served for 4 years in Ecuador. He was the director of youth ministries as well as director of earthquake release for the catastrophic earthquake on the coast. And then last year, God brought them back here to Charlotte, here as in the US in Charlotte. And he now serves the same organization as director of security, training over 700 missionaries to go out into the mission field. He trains them in security, equipping them to serve in the most dangerous parts of the world. And he is currently the point person for the COVID-19 response. If you are in here, I want you to say, hello, darling. Hello, darling. Type it in for my dear friend, Michael Reeves.
Hey, y'all.
Michael!
I'm so glad to be here today.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I always say you are the funniest missionary because you are just hilarious. And it really was that humor that helped out in a really, really hard situation when we were overseas. So thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate it. But you put that out in the message, like the funniest guy. I'm like, that's a high bar. What
I
do I
said
have
the
to
funniest
perform? I don't
missionary.
know.
I said the funniest missionary.
I know, but
Not so funny.
but that well, yes, I'm funny, but I don't do it on cue. It's gotta be natural.
But those are the best ones. Those are the best ones, is when you do it on cue. So, Michael, I ask everybody that comes on the show, what are you grateful for? So tell us, what are you grateful for? And then our community is going to write in the comments the things that they are grateful for as well.
That's awesome. So when you sent these questions over, that one's a hard question, because what do you want the Sunday school answer, or what kind of thought do you put in? So I started thinking about it. I mean, obviously, I'm thankful for my family, my wife, my
Yeah,
kids, being brought up in a Christian home. Being in the mission field, you see that. I mean, that's not everybody. That's not everywhere. So how blessed we are to be in a country where we can worship, but also to
absolutely.
be brought up by Christian parents. I mean, that's not everybody has that luxury. But the other thing that I was really thinking about, okay, what are you grateful for? And this may not sound like a normal answer, but
Mhm.
I'm grateful for the hard stuff in life.
Right.
I'm grateful for, the trials that, we're allowed to go through,
Mm-hmm.
because when we look at scripture, it always says, those trials create endurance
Mm-hmm.
and character. And, we've talked about PTSD before. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, but
Right.
God brought me through that dark time, and through that struggle and that
Yeah.
scar tissue. I'm able to minister to people that other people couldn't reach, because I've been there, and there's that connection instantaneously. And I prayed, I was like, God, I've had people minister to me through this. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to use me. And you got to be careful when you tell God, use me.
Right. Right.
You better be ready, because I mean, you put your seatbelt on, he's going to use you. And out of the woodwork, immediately, people came forth with their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm really grateful for the hard stuff, because every time he lets you go through something and he brings you through it, that's just another tool in your kit bag and another
Right.
way to bless people.
Yes, absolutely. Kelly, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the show. So, Michael, I want to get into it because, oftentimes we hear missionary and it's kind of this far away thing, right? Unless
Yeah.
we're involved in our church or in another organization that has like missionaries that's going out for various reasons. And so I remember when you and your family were like, we're going to do, we're going to go on missions. We're missionaries. We're called to be missionaries. And even I was like, what does that look like? Like,
Yeah.
you hear it all the time. Yeah, people are going to Ecuador, they're going to Africa, they're going to Bosnia, they're going to all these places. But you're like, what do you actually do when you're
Yeah.
there? So,
So after we came on, we started working. I mean, I still call myself a missionary,
mhm,
but truthfully, I mean, the term's kind of evolving into cross-cultural missionary or cross-cultural worker,
yeah,
because if you're a believer, you're a missionary.
hmm,
And I mean, that's something that's just, it's come back time and time again. If you are in your community, you're serving the Lord. That's what we're called to do. I mean, just
hmm,
like in James, it says, faith without works is dead. Those are those works that the Spirit prompts you to do.
yeah,
And whether or not you're in Ecuador or Ukraine or Kenya or wherever, that missionaries do all kinds of things. We have people in the field that are nurses, doctors. We have one mission specifically, it's called Sports Friends.
hmm,
And they're people that are geared towards sports, but they use that as a foot in the door to disciple young people, teach them principles, but also give them some, just encouragement, teach them some sports, give them some skills with in
yeah.
places they may not have that love and attention and that opportunity.
Yeah, I love that you say that. I think sometimes it's so important that we oftentimes want to go in with our agendas, right? To
Right.
get our things in there, to get our agendas in there. But being able to have that all things common, right?
Mhm.
Whereas sports is something that's common that you can teach them these skills and get involved in what they're getting involved in. And then I think your agenda happens, naturally. There's some
Yeah.
things that, yeah, you put in place, but I think, and so when you guys went to Ecuador,
Mhm.
um, how was just I guess the integration or the changes from the US to going to Ecuador with a family of six? So,
Yeah.
here our living arrangements are bigger. You look around the world and, homes are smaller. That's just what
Yeah.
we do. So, how was that, for you and your family?
Well, we went through something called cross-cultural, training.
Okay.
We actually had 6 weeks of it, and honestly, that was a blessing because we had those expectations of culture shock,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we actually I think our expectations were even worse than what we were, than what we actually encountered there,
Mm-hmm.
um, and, culture shock is definitely one thing that the cross-cultural missionaries have to deal with, but
Yeah.
truthfully, I mean, getting out, learning the way, I mean, like, simple stuff like paying your bills online, they don't do it there. So, we had to learn, okay, well,
Really?
what do we do? So, I mean, I'm the extrovert, I don't know if people can tell that, but I'm the extrovert in the family, so I'm the one getting out there, so I would go pay electricity, I would go pay water. You have to pay all those places at separate places, you have to pay your electricity, your phone, your internet, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would be waiting in line for about an hour at a time. So if you wanted to pay your monthly bills, that would be about 2 days worth of, waiting and going across town. And so those things are a little bit hard to get used to. But if you've got experienced people, locals are the best.
Yeah.
Experienced missionaries, they still, you know, they have their way of thinking. So I always find it better to get a local friend to help walk you through those steps.
Mm-hmm.
But, the culture shock wasn't really that big of a deal. I'll tell you the one culture shock that really was hard is so we worked on a team with Bolivians, let's see, we had a Kiwi, New
Mm-hmm.
Zealander, some Australians, had people from all over the world.
Right.
And so when you speak common language, it's easy for you to assume that you have the same or similar cultural backgrounds.
Yeah. Yep.
And so the culture shock wasn't from the Ecuadorians
Mhm.
because we were expecting that. It was from the other Westerners. And particularly, I'll tell you a real quick story. Um,
Yeah.
because I had a Nikon camera, I was dubbed a photographer.
Yep.
And so I was voluntold to do many things, including taking pictures for a friend's wedding, which I love doing it, and it was fun. I just took 100,000 pictures. I'm like, there's gonna be some good ones in here.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, my buddy, who is Australian, his son walks right in front of the couple coming down the aisle after they had said their vows, and he's doing this. He's like,
Oh,
in
no.
my shot. I love that shot. If I had a picture of my kid doing that, I would
You
have been like,
would love
I
that
would
shot.
frame it. I
That
would
is so
frame it.
you.
And I mean, that's typical here in the States. You know, we love seeing our kids being kids.
Yes.
I I didn't post it public, but I put it in the album and I tagged him in it. It's like, hey, here's your kid. He was irate because in his eyes,
And yeah.
I was making fun of his kid, and I was like, I'm not. I'm just
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah. And I sat there and praised God. He put some grace in my heart and some
Right.
calm and patience. And I'm like, I listened to it. I took it in. I was like, I'm sorry. Look, I apologize. Your friendship
Yeah.
means so much to me, and I never want to do anything to damage that. I'll take it down. I followed up with him a couple of times, and he came back to me and he said, I really appreciate the way you handled that.
Wow.
Because
I
if it had been Sergeant Reeves or worse, Captain Reeves, you come at me, I'm like, do you know who I am?
Right, right.
I got a body count. Don't mess with me.
Right, right. I think that's so amazing that just because we speak the same language, the
Hmm.
interpretation is
Oh,
different,
absolutely.
right? The cultural differences and things like that. So I think I love how you guys have that cross culture kind of program and training so that
Right.
one, when you go into Ecuador, so, we were talking earlier. And so, how do you greet in Ecuador? May not be something you want to do here because, if somebody here comes up and kisses Kelly, you're going to be like, hey, what? Wait, I don't know
Oh, yeah.
you. So,
Yeah, so, yeah, we kiss. I mean, it's very there's a lot of European influence
mhm,
in
mhm.
Ecuador, so we kiss touching the right side of our cheeks, and, I mean, it's really sweet and, it's affectionate. The
Yeah,
men don't kiss men like that, but
right.
men will kiss women and women will kiss women,
Mhm.
and you just after 4 years of doing it, it's the norm, and actually, the hard part was coming back to the States, and I'd see somebody and be like, oh, I can't kiss you, I'm sorry," and that's kinda awkward.
Right. So I love it. So let's talk about these four kids that you have whisked away from what they know is normal, what they know is home, and you say we're going to Ecuador. How did that go over with them?
Well, my oldest is kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it,
Okay.
and because, I mean, when the earthquake happened in
Mhm.
Haiti,
Mhm.
I sat at Green Ramp's at Pope Air Force Base where we had all the gear loaded to fly out. I sat at Green Ramp for 2 weeks, and I told my family goodbye 5 times waiting to go to Haiti, and then it didn't come to fruition, because we were gonna do earthquake response
Mhm.
down there, and so he's kinda used to that whole, like, military family, like, you may have orders get canceled, things don't happen. So for my oldest, it was hard because I tried to resign, I couldn't resign. God opened the doors, and I actually got medically separated from the Army
Mhm.
after the Army said, "No, you can't resign." And
Mhm.
so December comes and we move off post.
Mhm.
And he kinda goes into meltdown. It's like, we're leaving his friends behind, we're leaving the only home he really knew behind,
Right.
and we move out in the community. But, I mean, we had the church there, and we transitioned well, but then with each stage, it got a little bit harder because it was getting more and more real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for a teenager, I mean, most
Mm.
teenagers do have a hard time adjusting to the field. But, God gave us a lot of grace to pour on them. He gave us a lot of resources. It was still hard,
Yeah.
but yeah, each of them had different struggles. Some of it was the
Mm.
interpersonal, some of it was, like Gabe, the baby, just had a hard time not being able to go to the store and buying what he wanted to buy.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. One, I love seeing you and Kelly with your kids and just the kindness and the concern that you have. And that doesn't mean that you don't have discipline or anything like
Mhm.
that. But I think so oftentimes as parents, and John and I can speak to this, is that you're called to serve a community, whether it's in ministry, whether it's something else that you're called to do, right, where you may have a job that you have to move around,
Yeah.
and your kids are, I mean, they're defaulted to whatever you do. And so oftentimes, you guys had a very, very clear and open communication with them.
Right.
And so whether or not you could or we could appease what they wanted, I think the understanding of what they needed and being able to, like you said, have that grace, have that patience.
Right.
And so for me, that's what this has taught me more than pastoring a church, because we've never had to like go and pick up and go to Ecuador, right?
Right.
But when we were moving around, our kids were really young. But how, when you get to Ecuador, how did you really integrate the kids into, what you guys were doing, and that this was more of, it wasn't just you and Kelly's mission, but it was a family mission?
Right. Oh, and there's definitely some gray area in there that you've got to figure out because it was a package deal. I mean, if
Right.
it didn't work for all of us, it didn't work for any of us.
That's so good.
And so, we were trying to find ways. We didn't want them to feel like they had to be, constantly doing ministry because their ministry was going to school
That's so good.
and, their ministry was making friends and their ministry was, being a normal kid in not so normal conditions.
Yeah.
But, we always invited them. Like when I went to the coast, um, first time, I didn't take them the first time because I didn't know what to expect. I'm glad because while we were there, we had a big, huge earthquake
Hmm.
aftershock hit us. But as things started dying down, we were going back more and more to build up this community. We took our kids along and we did like kids ministries and as they were, open to it, they would help with the kids ministries. Or Eric, he's the introvert. He
Hmm.
doesn't interact a lot. He would
Yeah.
have been happy just knowing enough Spanish to order food
Right.
at the mall, and
Right.
that's it. But we found ways to plug them in with their talents and their own personalities. So I gave him my Nikon. I'm like, go at it. Take pictures. We need pictures
Yeah.
for ministry letters. We need pictures just to document this. And that's what he did. So and we didn't do it perfect every time, but what we tried to do is
Mhm.
find something that connected them and, just explore it.
Yeah. Could you, I love that. Like, I think we oftentimes want to push our kids and to say, you do this ministry, but how you guys plugged it in was the same way that you kind of had those relationships, is organically,
Yeah,
and played to their strengths. Because yeah, you're a teacher and you play, the guitar, and you do all those things, and you're an extrovert, and it works to who you are. And so just with our kids is, they're in ministry, but there's certain things that, they do. Our oldest son, who is 23 now, in the
mhm,
Navy in Spain. But when he was 15, and we were serving at a church, he became part of what we call the Spectrum Ministry, right?
right,
So, and he loved it. And who would have thought? I mean, I definitely would not have
yeah,
thought, but he was so kind and caring. And so it was like he found his way. So I love how you guys let your kids find the way. So let's go back to Eric ordering food and speaking Spanish.
mhm.
How long did it take you guys to really understand and to be able to speak the language? And is it Spanish and English speaking, or how is that in like some of the towns?
No, like, there are expats there, but typically they don't live in the province we were in.
Okay.
There's a few, but honestly, they live in their own community where they, smoke pot and do all their hippie things.
Yeah.
So we avoided that side of the province. But for the most part, I mean, they just like in American schools, they take typically English as a language in high school, and they don't get to practice it.
Hmm.
So, like us, after graduating and moving on, we may have retained, a little bit of
Right.
Spanish.
Right.
Um, but the young kids that are learning it, there's a few
Mhm.
bilingual schools. They love to practice it, and you'll just be walking along, and I've got a very what they call blanco face, just very pale, and so
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
make the assumption, hey, he speaks English, so you hear a hello, hello, how are you? Just
Aw,
because they want to use it.
they wanna use English, and you guys wanna try use your
Yeah.
Spanish. Yep.
And I had a buddy that lived in London, and he was rusty with his English, but he owned a guitar shop, which was great. So we had a deal. I would walk in, and I would only speak Spanish to him, and he would only speak English to me, just so we could work on that. But the great thing about our organization is you have to you have to spend a year learning culture and language. Because if you go into a community and you don't
Wow.
understand the cultural context and you can't speak the language, most Americans want to go in and they're just like gung ho and they want to like, I want to start ministry, I want to start doing it now, now, now. But if you don't take the time to develop those relationships, your language and the culture, then what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for failure because you're going to start making assumptions based on your cultural context and it's not going to be the same.
Wow, I love that. So, talk a little bit about that. So, you guys decide because it could seem like we decided to be missionaries. We signed up to go to Ecuador and we're off.
Yeah,
What was that like? Because I know when you guys came in to kind of talk to the church, and but you guys have to get your own support on
yeah,
certain things, and so talk a little bit about that because I think it's important that sometimes we're like supporting missionaries, or you're asking to support, and we're like,
right.
well, where's the money going? I mean, I'm not like, but people want to
Yeah,
know.
yeah. No,
So
it's a
kinda give
valid
us,
question.
yeah. So give us some context around what that looks like.
Well, and there's different organizations like IMB.
I'm sorry, I don't wanna cut you off, but Monica is on,
Oh
Monica
my
York.
gosh,
So Monica was deployed with us as well. We were all in the same unit.
she was my first NCO ever, and
Was she?
she was one of the best NCOs ever.
She was amazing. Monica,
Yeah,
you are so amazing.
yeah. Well, it's good to have you on.
I know.
Um,
So
what was the question? I got ADD. I can't
I
remember stuff.
know. Okay, so I was saying, what is like we were talking about the
Oh,
money.
raising
And
support and
yeah, and
so
what does that look like? I decide to be a missionary and then
yeah, so like I'm Southern Baptist, so my first thought was the IMB, which is the International Mission Board. But because we had teenagers, they're like, no, you can't go. I'm like,
mhm,
well, God's calling me. I'm gonna go. And I was like, all right, well, what else is out there? And praise God for that because IMB they'll write checks and
mhm.
you know they raise the support for the missionaries and send them, and that's great.
Okay.
But what we had to do is we found another organization that is faith based, so we have to go out there and raise our own support.
Yep.
Which for me, I'm an extrovert, so I don't mind getting out there. And once
Yeah.
you get over the uncomfortable feeling of like, hey, we're
Can you
going. God's sending us. Would you like to be a part of that, whether it's in
right.
prayer or finance? Once you get over the awkwardness of that,
Mhm.
it's fun because I mean, if somebody feels called, God's going to lead them. That's the Holy
Mhm.
Spirit. That's not your job. That's the Holy
Mhm.
Spirit.
Mhm.
But you get out there and you have maybe 600 prayer partners and
Wow.
70 or 80 financial partners,
Wow.
and you start thinking about, okay, well, you've got a budget. And I mean, I do take care of things I need to take care of for my kids. Some missionaries go on the very bare minimum and they're just getting by. I have
Right.
4 kids and they're my first ministry. So
Yes.
I'm not gonna scrimp where I don't need to. Like,
Mm.
if my kid needs violin lessons because
Important to
that's
them.
important to him, then I'll find something else to cut. But I want my
Yeah.
kids and my ministry and my family, all of that to thrive.
Yeah.
So you think about what's important. So yeah, I I'm not gonna be a bad steward with that money because I know who's paying for it. I know who's giving
Right.
sacrificially. So it makes it easier not to go out when you get paid and you go to Sam's and get you the big screen TV just to replace
Right.
the old one.
And how much was it that you guys had? Because I remember when you were raising money, I was like, "Oh my goodness." It seemed just like a big amount, right?
Yeah,
And so how much did you guys have to raise? Because you actually have to raise that money before you can go. They're very,
yeah.
um
We had to raise, oh gosh, because of the travel, the school that we went to, the intercultural school I was telling you about,
mhm.
and
And what, like,
I'll
the size of your family, so it depends on kind of all of
upwards
those
of
factors.
35 or 40,000, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And, that was the travel, that was setting up a house, that was paying for the schools that we needed, there was a lot passports. We actually to get our visa in Ecuador it was several $1,000s because, we had to have it translated, go through all the other process, it was expensive.
Wow. And so, Michael, I know we're running short on time. One of the things I want to know is what are some of the things that you did there? Like, how did you guys support the people of Ecuador? Because the reason was
Mm.
you were going to support those people in ministry. Give us an idea of some of the stuff that you were able to just do, and how were you able to impact those communities?
Well, I'll say I didn't impact anybody.
Hmm.
God blessed me and allowed me to be a part of His plan.
That's so
Um,
good.
because nothing, like Paul said, our best works are like dirty rags,
That's
and
right.
that's how I look at it. I mean, He just allows me to be a part of it.
Hmm.
So I went down specifically to disciple young people,
Okay.
and that was kind of the foot in the door. I mean, that's never been like what I considered a life calling.
Hmm.
But so as soon as we were cleared for ministry and language and all of that, after that first year, they gave me the role of director for the youth ministry. So
Hmm.
I was able to do a lot of mentoring. One of the things that I'm really proud that I was able to institute there was a purity ministry,
Hmm.
because pornography, if you remember in the barracks in the army and think about the porn epidemic in the army,
Hmm.
that's what it's like for the young people in Ecuador. And the pastors are really afraid to address
Have
that
those
from the pulpit because
conversations.
it's taboo.
Hmm.
But they were happy to have an American missionary go out there and just like ruffle some feathers. So I started small, doing Bible studies and Sunday school, focusing on ministry. And like towards the end of our last term, my Spanish was good enough where I preached for an hour on purity.
That's so good.
And
Wow.
and that again, that's all praise be to God, because I mean
Yeah.
that's nothing I did on my own. But after we were there for, a year and a month, the earthquake, I don't know if you remember, the earthquake in 2016 was
Mhm.
devastating on the coast.
Yep.
We lived in the Andes, which was 15 hours away driving time. So we felt it, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But we were like, okay, well, we're here. There's three things that our missionaries do: proclaim the gospel,
Mhm.
equip the local church, and respond to need. And we are like, there's a need.
Wow.
And what we did is we equipped the local church in our province, and we raised funds for going out there and doing earthquake relief. And one of the tools that we were able to add to our kit bag was trauma healing. And trauma
Wow.
healing is a ministry. If you don't know anything about it, Google Trauma Healing Institute. It's a great ministry, and you can use it. I mean, honestly, we thought, well, these people have been traumatized by the earthquake.
Mhm.
And so we equipped local people from our province to go help us, do these sessions. And what
Right.
what our friends in our hometown says, like, I'm glad we're taking this to the coast, but we need this here. Because
Right.
if you're living and breathing, you have trauma in your past. And what this ministry does is it helps you go through biblical and psychological steps to heal.
Mhm.
And like we've talked about before, God uses that scar tissue in
Yes.
your past to help minister to other people. So after coming back, I've actually used the same ministry that I used on the coast and used back there to minister to military. And I've gone to Kenya to train the Kenya military, and I've gone to Ukraine twice to train their chaplains and how to help people with PTSD, people with wounds from combat, to help
Yeah.
them heal as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Michael, I literally have to have you on again because I
Okay.
think it's not just the missionary work, right? But I think all woven in your story is one, how, you felt called, that God had called you to this and you're just answering the calls, but also how your story has been interwoven. And I think we haven't had an opportunity to get the interwoven stories. And I think those are important because at any time you could have stopped, you would have had good reason to stop,
Mm.
and to not even go, your tours and all of those things. But before we go, I want you to just speak to someone now in the midst of COVID-19 and about how can they continue to have hope, right? As God is interweaving their stories. What is something that you would say to somebody that's having a rough time now?
Nothing is lost. God uses everything. And, just like we see in the Bible, just like we've seen throughout history, people have gone through trials that, they didn't understand it. And it may never make sense to us, but don't waste this opportunity dwelling on the hardships. use this opportunity to bless somebody else in your life. And I'll say this, I mean, I never feel more at peace, even in the storm, than when God's using me to minister to somebody else. And so use these times that you're feeling anxious, uncertain, and say, you know what, God, I know that this is a temporary season,
Yeah.
but I want you to use me because there's people out there suffering worse than I am. And my scar tissue is going to speak to them better than anybody else. So put those people in my path.
I love that. Thank you so
No,
much.
thank
That
you so much for
so
having
here
me.
over here, what we usually say is when someone says something good, we say, "Hello, darling." So that is my hello, darling. That just spoke so much that God doesn't waste anything.
Mm,
And I always say that whether or not you're a believer or not, just know that you're not wasted. You
mm.
know, your situations are not wasted. So Michael, before you leave, I put down and I pinned it in the comments, Reeves family epistle. Tell us a little bit about that so we can stay connected with you. Tell us how we can stay connected with you from that
Absolutely.
as well as your social media.
So yeah, we had a page at reevesenecuador.com. I don't even know if it exists anymore, but what we found is it was really hard to manage. And we found Epistle like maybe a couple of years ago. And what it is, it's just a landing page, and it's got updates on there for those that, you know, if the Holy Spirit's calling you to be a partner, whether it's prayer or financial, there's a link there to give. There's a link to subscribe. So what you can do is you can go check out our page, and all the public stuff will be on there, all the updates, all the blurbs that are public. The things that we want to share more with our prayer partners, you know, that really aren't for public consumption. If you go to subscribe, then you'll get those updates in your email. And the great thing about this, I was telling Portia, if you if you go in and subscribe, it'll let you choose how often you get those updates. So if you're one of those people that's like, I only want to hear once a month, don't be sending me nothing. I'm gonna unsubscribe you. It gives you that opportunity to just do it once a month.
Absolutely love it. And then how can we keep in touch with you on social media and where are you most active?
Well, we do have a page on Facebook. So if you look for me, it's Michael W. Reeves
Mhm.
on Facebook. You can totally look me up there. We have a Reeves family ministry page on that. Um, yeah, I'm trying to stay away from a lot of social media. It's
Yeah.
hard because you get sucked in, and in times like this where you're all you see are the news reports, and then the conspiracy theory, and people like saying, "Look, you put tinfoil on your head, you won't get COVID." Like sometimes
Right.
it's just better to tune out. But if you add me on social media or you go to our page, the one promise I'll say is I don't like politics on my page. The only thing I like is something funny
Mhm.
or something about Jesus. I mean, that's funny and Jesus. That's my thing. I don't
Humor
like
in
putting,
Jesus, right?
you don't need to put more negativity out there because there's enough
Right.
out there to last a lifetime.
I love it. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here. Your story is amazing. And like I said, we have to have you back either whether it's on this or whether it's on the podcast. The podcast will give us a little more
Let me
time.
know.
So I
I'll
would
be there
love
with
to have
bells
you
on.
on so that you can tell that story.
Mm,
Kelly, thank you so much for allowing us to have your man on today. I want to say thank you to Eric, to Michaela, to Xander, and to Gabe for allowing your father to really be funny and be a man of his word and a man of God. So God bless you guys. Thank you so much, Michael. We
mm.
appreciate you being on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see your face, and I can't wait to see you in person. We need to get that really soon.
We are. As soon as all this is over, we're headed
Mm.
to Charlotte.
Oh, you coming to Carowinds then? We going on
Yeah,
some roller
I'm
coasters?
coming to
Yeah.
Carowinds. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All
All
right.
right, Michael.
Love you guys so
Love
much.
you too. Thank you.
Take care.
So, you guys, that was Michael Reeves. If you guys enjoyed that, I want you to say, hello, darling, hello, darling, hello, darling, so that we know you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed it. I know the story, but it's always, you don't know all of the story. And so I think the one thing that he left with was that God does not waste anything. So, you guys, we'll be back here tomorrow, same time. same place. We are here every single weekday, Monday through Friday. This is your daily dose of inspiration and empowerment. As always, you guys can keep in touch with us. If you text the phrase wake up to 31996, text the phrase wake up to 31996 to stay in the know. You guys know how we do it. We end every single show with this declaration: waking up is automatic, showing up is intentional. Today, I will show up. See you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.